The 1990s marked a boom in digital toys. Video games had been climbing in popularity since the 80s, and as electronics became cheaper, interactive handheld entertainment hit an all-time high. Portable electronics weren't new. Back in 1979, Milton Bradley released the Microvision, a primitive handheld console with swappable cartridges and a 16 by 16 pixel LCD screen. It was simple, just a single dial or button for control, but it laid the foundation for what we now recognize as handheld gaming. Through the 80s, we saw that idea evolve with devices like the Atari Lynx and Nintendo's Game & Watch series. But it was the late 80s and early 90s when the real heavyweights arrived: Nintendo's Game Boy and Sega's Game Gear. Outside the realm of traditional video game consoles, LCD handhelds began appearing more frequently on toy shelves. These had existed since the 70s, but the 90s brought a tidal wave of them. Electronics were more affordable, and toy makers took full advantage. In 1996, Japanese toy company Bandai, already seasoned in LCD toys with their solar power line, released something simple yet revolutionary: Tamagotchi. Created by Akihiro Yokoi and Aki Maita, Tamagotchi was designed as a virtual pet you could carry in your pocket, a response to the strict no-pet policies in many Japanese apartment buildings at the time. The name combines the word tamago, Japanese for egg, and watch, referencing the toy's original concept as a wrist-worn device. Instead of a watch, the toy would take the form of a keychain, a plastic egg-shaped shell with a tiny LCD screen and 3 buttons: select, confirm, and cancel. On screen lived a digital alien creature the player raised from birth to death. It needed food, attention, and cleanup, and the level of care given determined how it grew. If it was treated well, it would evolve into a happy, healthy pet. If it was neglected, it could become a grumpy delinquent, or worse, die. Yes, Tamagotchi could die. The average life cycle of the pet was around 2 weeks or so. Once it passed, players would then start over with a new egg, repeating the cycle again and again. When Bandai and collaborator Wiz pitched the toy to distributors, many didn't get it.
The Tamagotchi is an egg-shaped computer game that involves feeding a small baby bird. Sounds boring to me, but in Japan, they're mad for it.
They saw the gameplay as too passive, more waiting than playing. As a result, Tamagotchi had a small initial release. But when it hit store shelves, it became a sensation almost overnight. Within 6 months, Bandai sold 5 million units, with lines of eager buyers camping outside stores for restocks. Since the company's inception in 1950, Bandai had never managed to fully break into the American market. That changed thanks to their success with a line of Power Rangers toys in 1993, which gave them the confidence to also expand Tamagotchi internationally. Much as before, Western retailers were also skeptical of the toy's validity.
It's not the kind of thing you'd expect kids to scramble for. Cyber pets, or as they're known in Japanese, Tamagotchi.
Some saying it was nothing but a gimmick, and even likening it to a digital version of the Pet Rock.
But then again, most people can remember the Pet Rock of the 1970s. And try to find one of those today.
Party pooper, party pooper.
But that skepticism vanished when US sales mirrored Japan's success, starting a phenomenon and spawning a wave of imitators, such as Tiger Electronics' Gigapets the following year. So why did Tamagotchi explode? Well, for 2 major reasons: affordability and emotional engagement. Games and electronics in general had been becoming less and less expensive over the last decade, but even within that context, Tamagotchi were exceptionally affordable. Early portable game consoles like the Microvision and the Lynx were generally considered too expensive for most people, and even a Game Boy, which was seen as the most cost-effective of the major portable gaming consoles, would still cost you $80 or $90 back then, not to mention the price of the actual games on top of that. By contrast, a single Tamagotchi only ranged between $15 or $20. It was simple, cheap, and had a longer battery life than most handheld electronics. And emotionally, it gave kids a real sense of ownership and responsibility. Every pet evolved differently depending on the player's choices, making each experience feel personal and unique. What toy companies once saw as a flaw, its passive nature, turned out to be its core appeal.
Oh, I had my store director tell me that she was going to outlaw me from bringing it, because it's addicting.
Of course, there was pushback. Some parents grew concerned upon witnessing their kids absolutely racked with despair over a digital pet's death. But many child psychologists defended the experience, saying it helped children process real emotions in a safe environment. Not all play is fun and games. Sometimes it's about learning responsibility and coping with loss. As parents, we typically want to shelter our children from negativity, but we also need to remember that kids are still people. They can and do convey a wide range of thoughts and emotion, and aren't just simple and happy all the time. They live complex emotional lives just like the rest of us, even if we can't always see it. And yes, some kids really got into their Tamagotchis, even holding funerals, completely retiring their devices after their pet died. But in hindsight, claims that Tamagotchi was psychologically harmful to children have largely been debunked. By late 1997, however, the craze had peaked. For that year's Christmas, Tamagotchi lost its crown to Furby, a new kind of interactive pet with the added appeal of an actual physical creature to interact with, for better or worse. Yet, even as the frenzy faded, the brand endured. New Tamagotchi models continue to release today, often with crossovers featuring Hello Kitty, Pac-Man, and even Pokémon. It may not be the cultural juggernaut it once was, but Tamagotchi continues to be one of Bandai's most consistent moneymakers.
Do you have Tamagotchi fever? If you hang toys from pets, enjoy lasers and secret compartments...
By 1997, Bandai noticed something interesting about their new alien cash cow. Tamagotchi was designed to be gender neutral, but sales data told a different story. Around 70% of buyers were teen girls. That wasn't a problem, but it did leave a gap in the market, so Bandai began brainstorming a new virtual pet aimed specifically at boys. To appeal to this different demographic, the team decided the new toy needed something Tamagotchi lacked: a sense of competition. Initially, they toyed with reviving an old Bandai property from the 80s called Pocket Zaurus, a line of dinosaur-themed stationery. The idea was to mash up that brand with Tamagotchi-style raising mechanics and a battle system. The prototype was called Capsule Zaurus, featuring monsters that would fight, die, and pass on their traits to the next generation. But the concept never clicked. Maybe the designs were too cute for the tone they wanted, or maybe Bandai realized reviving an obscure IP wasn't the way forward. Fun bit of trivia though, Pocket Zaurus was created by Shinji Hashimoto, who would later become brand manager for Final Fantasy and co-create Kingdom Hearts. Funny how all these things connect sometimes. Eventually, Bandai circled back to what worked. They teamed up again with Wiz, the same company that helped create Tamagotchi, and set out to design something new. The result? A rugged, battle-focused virtual pet. Instead of friendly little aliens, you raised fierce digital monsters. And rather than just nurture them, this time you train them and fight. The name was straightforward: Digital Monster, or just Digimon. Digital Monster version 1 hit Japanese shelves on June 26, 1997, a date that also, coincidentally, saw the release of a little book called Harry Potter. Never heard of it. Sounds lame, though. Side note, I know I'm like the only millennial who never gave a shit about Harry Potter, so watching that cultural empire unravel in recent years in light of its creator being a hateful, bigoted nutjob feels oddly satisfying, like vindicating, even. Anyway, back to monsters. And I don't just mean Joanne. Compared to Tamagotchi, Digimon was immediately more intense. Where Tamagotchi devices were round and friendly looking, the Digital Monster toy was modeled after a brick and metal cage, cracked open from the inside, because your monster had just broken free. The designs reflected this shift in tone. While Tamagotchi creatures were silly and abstract, Digimon were sharp, aggressive, and full of attitude. Artist Kenji Watanabe, working at Wiz, took inspiration from American comic books, resulting in designs full of bold lines, exaggerated proportions, and heavy shadows. But underneath the new coat of paint, the gameplay was still familiar and quite passive. You fed your monster, cleaned up its mess, and trained it. Instead of praise or discipline like in Tamagotchi, Digimon introduced a training minigame that boosted strength and influenced evolution paths. As in Tamagotchi, Digimon evolved, or digivolved if you prefer, across several life stages, reaching their final stage in about a week's time. Each monster went from baby to baby 2, then child, adult, and perfect. The final 6th evolution stage many fans are familiar with wouldn't appear until the next generation of toys in 1998. The key to reaching higher forms wasn't just time, it was how well you raised your monster. Training regularly, minimizing care mistakes, and winning battles would all factor into whether your Digimon became a champion or a dud. And just like before, neglect could lead to death. But one major difference set Digimon apart: battles. Once a Digimon was past the initial baby stages, they could fight other Digimon by connecting two devices via a set of built-in prongs atop each one. The two monsters would face off, each launching a sequence of attacks until one of the two landed a finishing blow. These early battles were mostly automatic, the monsters fought on their own. You could boost your odds by training your Digimon well and feeding them protein just before battle, which raised their win rate, but for the most part, battles were out of the player's hand. Each Digimon species had a base win probability out of 16. Stronger monsters had higher odds, but the actual outcome was never guaranteed. Winning battles was critical if you wanted your Digimon to reach the final perfect stage. To get there, your Digimon had to fight a certain number of battles and win at least 60% of them. A player's level of care is determined by how much time they spend training their Digimon, how many care mistakes they make, and how often they overfeed it or interrupt its sleep. Much like with a Tamagotchi, the Digimon calls out for attention via beeps when it needs something, whether it's hungry, lacks exercise, or is ready for bed without its blankie. If the player fails to respond within 20 minutes, a care mistake is recorded. Care mistakes influence the Digimon's evolution path, as do frequent overfeeding or waking it prematurely. You can keep feeding a Digimon even after its hunger gauge is full, to the point where it will begin to refuse food, a passive-aggressive reminder that you messed up and that this would affect its next evolution. Evolutions occur after a set amount of time, typically within a day or two. Digimon also periodically leave behind poop that must be cleaned up. If it accumulates, they become ill. They can also be injured in battle, and if sickness or injury is ignored or happens too frequently, the Digimon may die. They age at a rate of 1 year per real-life day. While death is inevitable, if a Digimon lives a long, healthy life and dies of old age, the next Digimon hatched from its egg will have an increased chance of reaching that rare final stage of evolution. For transparency, I should mention that the device shown in my footage is actually the 20th anniversary re-release of the original digital monster. I still have my original 1997 model right here, but its battery cover has long since gone missing, so I can't keep it running. The batteries just won't stay in place. The 20th anniversary version is cosmetically identical to the original, but combines the first 5 versions into a single device. It also incorporates the 6th evolution stage, faster evolution times, and built-in battle capabilities, eliminating the need to connect with other devices. It also allows you to raise 2 monsters at once. Notably, this updated version removes sleep disturbances from the evolution requirements, likely because Digimon now evolve within hours instead of over several days. Between June 1997 and August 1998, Bandai released 5 different versions of the original digital monster in Japan. The core gameplay didn't change from device to device — feed, clean, train, battle, but each version featured a new background, unique shell colors, adding up to 17 total variations by the end, and of course, a completely new set of Digimon. This strategy created a kind of collectible ecosystem. Kids wanted to see what Digimon each version had and compare them with their friends. It also gave the impression that the Digimon world was bigger than what fit on a single screen. One interesting bit of analog trickery here is that the backgrounds weren't part of the LCD display. They were physical backdrops printed on cardboard and layered beneath the transparent screen. It's a classic arcade technique, designed to make the pixel sprites stand out more clearly, especially in direct sunlight. It also made the monsters feel like they were living inside a little world, an effect that helped sell the immersion. Each new version came with a different minigame to train your Digimon, but under the hood, the mechanics stayed exactly the same. The evolution paths, battle probabilities, and stat formulas were just reused and reskinned across versions. So while Agumon and Gabumon may look very different, they're functionally identical. Same goes for Greymon and Monochromon, or Monzaimon and Nanomon. This is why early Digimon often have similarly named attacks — Baby Flame, Petite Fire, Magical Fire, so on and so forth, because the attack sprites were reused too. The names had to match the sprite, not the other way around. The creation of each monster typically started with the sprites as well, which Kenji Watanabe would then take and reverse engineer into full-fledged designs, fleshing them out into the detailed art we now associate with the brand. While battles were framed as competitive, they were largely automated and chance-based, more like dice rolls than real contests. There was no virus, data, vaccine type advantage system yet, no attributes. Each Digimon simply had a base probability of winning a battle. Protein boosted that number to a certain point, but that was the only player influence. Interestingly, the adult stage had the deepest meta. Behind the scenes, the 7 adult Digimon in each version were secretly grouped into types, with rock-paper-scissors style advantages over each other. It wasn't obvious to players, but it added an invisible layer of balance. Just like with Tamagotchi, poor raising of your monsters could result in them evolving into weak or ugly Digimon. Underwhelming evolutions like Numemon, Sukamon, or Nanimon that fans refer to as Trashmons. They had the lowest win rate of any form, just 25%. But to discourage players from just immediately resetting, these Trashmons came with a twist. If you powered through and won enough battles with them, you could unlock a secret perfect level evolution, that monster being the strongest in each version. Monzaimon, Digitamamon, Edamon, these heavy hitters rewarded dedication, even if you'd raised a stinker. It was a clever way to keep players engaged and reward perseverance, even in failure. The creation of the original digital monster virtual pets is fascinating to look back on. especially for Western fans, to whom the franchise often feels quite elusive, as if it emerged fully formed from a team of faceless foreigners. To be fair, much of the earliest design documentation for Digimon has been lost to time. Ironically, Bandai failed to digitize a lot of their early work. Even the name most commonly associated with Digimon's creation, Akiyoshi Hongo, isn't a real person. It's a pseudonym that actually represents at least 3 key individuals that we know of: Aki Maita, the creator of Tamagotchi; Takeichi Hongo of Wiz Corporation, who helped finalize the toy's concept and spearhead its marketing; and Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru, a Toei animator who served as character designer for the anime. By the time the third version of the V-Pet launched, talks with Toei and Shueisha were already underway to develop the Digimon anime, the V-Tamer manga, and a short film directed by Mamoru Hosoda. This is why all 3 of those early adaptations feature Taichi as the lead. It was an attempt to unify the brand under one recognizable face. The franchise gained immediate traction in Japan thanks to heavy marketing in kid-focused magazines like Shonen Jump and V-Jump, where readers could learn about the new devices, enter art contests, and read tie-in manga such as Come On Digimon. One of the key designers, Kensuke Ota, became the brand's live-action spokesperson. Donning American football gear and adopting the over-the-top persona of Pile Volcano Ota, he embodied the kind of chaotic energy that defined early Digimon, eventually even lending his likeness and voice to the characters Volcamon and Pile Volcamon. Ota remained in character in magazines and at tournaments and live events until at least 2002, and made occasional returns for anniversaries in the 2010s before leaving Bandai in 2016 to pursue voice acting full-time. The initial marketing push for Digimon was quite the spectacle. It was weird, it was over the top, it was very Japanese, and boy did it work. From the get-go, Digimon was marketed with this sense of enthusiasm and absurdity that appealed directly to kids. Where Pokémon was clean and polished, Digimon was wild and aggressive. Even the art style, thanks to Kenji Watanabe, was more exaggerated and intense. These monsters didn't just look cool, they looked like they could punch you through a wall, and in many cases, that was the point. The late 90s saw a surge of monster-raising franchises in Pokémon's wake, but contrary to popular belief, Digimon wasn't a knockoff like so many others. It was one of the few that can legitimately claim to have origins that predate, or at least run parallel, to Pokémon. While there's roughly a year-long gap between the release of the two, many of their surface-level similarities are purely coincidental. In fact, it was only when Bandai first tried to copyright the term digital monster that they even learned of Pokémon's existence. And, as even demonstrated by the existence of Bandai's very own Pocket Zaurus, the core concept behind Pokémon was not exactly original in the first place. Interestingly, the digital monster toys hit American shelves a full year before Pokémon did, demonstrating that it was always intended as more of a follow-up to Tamagotchi than it was a reaction to Nintendo's monster phenomenon. The American version of the toys were functionally the same, but made a few changes. 1 or 2 monster names were localized, and the tombstone that appeared when a Digimon died was swapped out for a computer monitor. Because death is fine, but death with a gravestone is too real. The evolution stage names were also altered. What Japan called Child, Adult, and Perfect became Rookie, Champion, and Ultimate, which led to headaches later when Japan added a 6th stage and named it Ultimate. So now the English and Japanese evolution terms are permanently out of sync, thanks for that. Ultimately, the V-Pets never took off in the US quite like they did in Japan. Only the first 2 versions were officially released in North America, while English releases of versions 3 through 5 were distributed exclusively in Australia, alongside a so-called version 6 that in actuality just used recycled sprites from the Digimon Pendulum, the first toy in the second generation of Digimon pets. Digimon wouldn't truly break into the American mainstream until the first season of the anime aired on Fox Kids in 1999. For many, this was their introduction to the franchise, right at the peak of Pokemania, so it's not surprising that Digimon was written off by some as a shallow copycat, a reputation that unfortunately lingers even today. For fans who first met Digimon through the anime, it can be a bit of a surprise to revisit the original V-Pets and see just how different the monsters and evolution mechanics really were. It was, for instance, the anime that introduced the concept of impermanent evolution. In the virtual pets, there was no undoing an evolution once it occurred. If you ended up with an undesired Digimon, the only way to try again was reset or wait for it to die. Many bits of lore we now take for granted also didn't even exist back then. Patamon doesn't evolve into Angemon, and Piomon can't become Birdramon. They don't even appear in the same devices. Garurumon, Angemon, and Birdramon all made their debut in version 2 alongside Gabumon, as did Kabuterimon, who predates Tentomon by nearly a full year. And in fact, a good chunk of the version 2 Digimon, Angemon, Kabuterimon, Birdramon, Waymon, Yukidarumon, and Vegiemon, originated from a fan art contest. Their designs were selected and turned into sprites, and then those sprites were reinterpreted into full illustrations by Kenji Watanabe, creating an interesting game of visual telephone. There's also strong evidence that version 5 of the digital monster was originally developed as a crossover with Godzilla before being hastily retooled for Digimon instead. Many of its monster sprites closely resemble classic kaiju. Fast forward to today, and Digimon has finally done an official Godzilla collaboration. And yes, they totally reused those old version 5 sprites. The first generation of Digimon virtual pets lasted just over a year. By late 1998, the brand was expanding into manga, trading cards, and television. That October saw the release of a new V-Pet toy line that moved away from purely chance-based combat in favor of something a little more strategy-driven, but we'll get to that in a later video. Much like Tamagotchi, the simplicity of the original digital monster toy, once considered a drawback, was actually key to its appeal. The low-cost and easy-to-understand mechanics encouraged a sort of passive, habitual care that was perfect for kids. While Tamagotchi skewed toward teen girls, Digimon found its niche with boys. Tournaments were held across Japan, with each new iteration of the toy expanding the brand's presence and keeping Digimon in the public eye. Digimon may always be seen as Pokémon's underdog rival, a shadow it never asked for, but over nearly 3 decades, it's managed to transcend its Tamagotchi roots, becoming more than just a spin-off. What started as a simple LCD toy grew into a sprawling universe of games, anime, and mythology. It didn't just mimic trends. It adapted, battled, and digivolved into something uniquely its own.